everyone. This is Tracy Malone, and today we are going to talk with my friend Rhonda Nordyke, who is the founder of the Women's Financial Wellness Center. And she has a new book out that is designed to help women really understand their patterns around money, specifically in the divorce arena, because those who have maybe not managed the money before, not been in charge of it, might have money fears, might have money trauma. So let's go meet Rhonda and hear what her new book is all about. I loved it. It's a great book. It's going to help a lot of people. So let's go welcome Rhonda. So welcome, Rhonda. I'm so excited to have you to my show today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, you have a new book out that I am so excited about. It is called Bold Beginnings, A Journey of Divorce and Financial Confidence. So tell me who this book is for.
Hmm. So, this book is for the women that really want to be able to improve their relationship with money.
Mhm.
And they're looking for this next level of either confidence or they're looking to reinvigorate the confidence that they once had. A lot of times I hear, Rhonda, I used to balance my checkbook, if anybody still does that anymore, right? I used to balance my checkbook. I used to be independent. I used to make good decisions. And then I got married and, I got away from that. And I'm now questioning my ability to be able to make good decisions around the finances. My husband's super smart. And so I just want to make sure um, that I'm navigating through that. So that is really who that person is for, whether they're contemplating divorce in the early stages, in the thick of it. Um, that is really the intention behind the book.
Well, I would also imagine that it would help someone who's already through it and now has divorce fog lifted and going, okay, I'm really uncertain about all this money stuff. What do I do?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know that in the beginning of the book, there's a chapter on changing your relationship with money. And there's a little quiz in there, which I happened to take, and I will not tell you where I fell, but it's not a good thing. So how does this help people understand their possible money fears or almost relationship with money? How does that quiz?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the quiz is called the Financial Personality Quiz. And I love it because it's really intended to just be a level of awareness. Where are you at, right? I always tell people it's not intended to be judgmental or, make people feel bad. It's just, hey, we're just getting a pulse on where are you at with your relationship with money? Are you an analyzer? Are you an avoider? Are you an initiator? And so there's five different levels, and each of those levels has a persona that we talk about in the book. Um, but it's just intended to give people a baseline. And at the end of the day, for the people that score as either a dreamer or an avoider, the goal is really for them to move across that line to either become a collaborator, an
Mhm.
initiator, or an analyzer. And the reason for that is because we kind of look at those three as kind of like above the line, right? And so they may want to be able to collaborate. They might be wired to have, Excel spreadsheets are their love language, right? They're super analytical and a comparative shopper. And then you may have the person that is more on the initiator side. And the key takeaway as a result of doing that exercise is the confidence formula is knowledge plus experience. So if you have the knowledge without the experience, it's theory. If you
Mhm.
have the experience without the knowledge, it's trial and error. But when we get those two things working together, that's where we start to see the acceleration in confidence happening. And so it gives us a good baseline of the launch pad for our confidence.
Yeah, and I have done financial courses and read books on financial things, and I end up like putting them down because I'm like, none of these things apply to me because I'm so low on your scale. Going, yeah, I'm here, right? But those things tend to scare me. So how does this help the avoider or the dreamer who might have that self-confidence of, I don't know, I don't think I know this, and almost the shame of not knowing, no matter what age they are.
Yeah. So, a couple of things. I think at the end of the day, right, it is okay to just acknowledge where we're at, right? The fact that people have taken the quiz is a great first step. A lot of times, avoiders in particular have a hard time taking that first step, whatever that is. But then once they do, it usually becomes a little bit easier to
Mhm.
take a next step and a next step and a next step. So, unfortunately or fortunately, right, our financial confidence is a process. It does not happen overnight. One of the chapters that we go through is knowing your numbers, right? And I think that's one area that people really overcomplicate. And so in this particular chapter is, hey, numbers are your best friend. Like we need to start saying, you know what? I'm just going to ask really good questions. I'm going to get familiar with things. I don't have to know all the things. Sometimes I just need to surround myself with people that are smarter than me who can help me and
Mhm.
either delegate those things and yet be involved or learn them so that you can implement them,
Mhm.
you know? So I really love that. And I think, at the end of the day, one of the other exercises that we put in there as far as knowing your numbers is how can we simplify? So I talk about the rule of 72, which is an Albert Einstein brainchild that I learned. It was one of the very first things I learned in the financial industry. And I began to apply that to determine how quickly my money would double, or if I had debt, how quickly the debt would double, kind of in the reverse. And it's
Mhm.
a super simple, do it on your calculator type, exercise that helps people say, okay, in making decisions, I've got a simple, easy way to evaluate what direction I want to go.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing I was thinking too, Tracy, is, I share in the beginning of the book a little bit about my money story and the relationship that I had as a kid and even as a young adult. And I remember, starting in the financial industry in my late mid to late 20s. I knew nothing about money. I mean, I knew how to save. I knew that I didn't really want to be in debt. I knew that I wanted to have a better life for me and my family, but I didn't really know a whole lot else. I didn't know how money worked. I didn't have good role models in my life around that.
Mhm.
And I did a really bold thing, and that was I surrounded myself with really smart people and I asked questions and
Mhm.
I observed and I asked more questions and I observed some more. And then eventually I got to the point where I was pushing back. And then I thought, you know what? And pushing back in a good way, right? Like challenging status quos, challenging my mindset. I mean, I grew up in a place where the only time you ever called a financial advisor or an attorney was if you were in trouble. And
Mhm.
it was this Hail Mary approach, like, okay, I'm in this bind, now what? It wasn't, hey, I'm gonna plan,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so for me to be in an industry that totally shook up all of my paradigms, I thought wealthy people were snotty
Mm.
or standoffish or selfish or what that was the mindset, right? Just being candid.
Mhm.
Um, and yet as a kid, I remember thinking, how did they get to that point? Like, gosh, look at that house. What did they do? And how did and when I surrounded myself with people that had experienced a significant amount of financial success, what I found was that the money actually, in these particular situations, made them more of who they already were.
Mhm.
They were generous, they
Mm.
were thoughtful, they were focused on providing value to people and making people's lives better. And I was like, this is not at all what I was taught. This is not at all how I thought. So I was grateful enough to be able to surround myself with really good people. And I just think money makes you more of who you already are. If you're a jerk and you're a jerk with little, you're gonna be a jerk with a lot. If you are right? I mean, it's just the reality. It's not the money that's making people bad. It's a heart issue.
Mhm.
And now we just have gone and it makes it even a bigger magnifies, right? Really what's going on.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you were talking about with your personal story, which I thought was really, you know, a key part of understanding your journey, so that to see your journey gives people hope. But, there's so many people with financial trauma and patterns of, how they've dealt with money, or coming, like you said, from a family of origin, that this is how we grew up, or this is what happens. So, in what other ways does like financial trauma affect women that make them sometimes in that freeze state? Because this is I mean, the people who are managing and are doing well don't necessarily go, I need this book. The people who are struggling or need the tools are the ones, and often those people in my world of narcissistic abuse, they're the ones who have had that financial trauma where maybe they weren't ever allowed to do anything with the money in the home, and that fear just cripples them.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, right, that is why the confidence piece is so important. I think the tricky part is when we're dealing with trauma, and again, I can only speak from my own experience, right? Is I remember thinking, okay, I want to be there. I don't even know how to get there. And what I meant by that was to be able to have conversations that weren't evoking a whole slew of emotions for me,
Mhm,
right? And I'll share a quick story, and I found this kind of interesting. So a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to buy an office space. And I had taken somebody through as a potential equity partner. I was giving her a tour. We were standing in the middle of my conference room, which I actually had a conference center. It was kind of cool. Held 100 people. So we would do live events in my space. And yeah, it was just like I had my own stage. I mean, it was just like, it was kind of cool. But, anyways, so we're walking through there and she goes, Ron, I don't feel good. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she said, I have such anxiety about the thought of the debt that's associated with taking on this space. Now, she didn't even know what the dollar amount was, right?
wow.
And I said, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Well, what I learned was she said, yeah, my dad was a business owner. Highs were high, lows were low. Car got repoed when we were, shopping one day. My mom and I came out, the car was gone. Um, our house had been foreclosed on, multiple times. So the thought of debt to her was just so overwhelming. And I
Mhm,
get it, right? And I said, well, the good news for you is you don't have to take on the debt because I am. I'm taking on the risk, right? Um, I said, but if you'd like, you can certainly rent from me.
mhm,
And so we had that conversation. But I think the takeaway that I had there is, you know, I wasn't necessarily going to change her mindset
mhm,
around her trauma. I became aware of it.
mhm,
And at the end of the day, right, she's going to have to work through that.
mhm,
And sometimes I think it's recognizing the physical aspects of it, but it's also taking small, bold actions that
mhm.
help us overcome those fears.
Yeah.
Um, and I would often put myself in a position where I was being forced to challenge some of those paradigms for myself. So,
Mm,
surrounding yourself with people who have been successful in that area, who can be a mentor, who can show you that it's possible. Therapy is always a good idea.
mhm,
Coaching is always a good idea, right? But
mhm,
the other piece of it is for me, when I was looking at how do I do that, it was step by step. What's the next bold thing that I can do? And I would
mhm,
show up and I'd buy a car on my own, right? Without my spouse, because I wanted to walk through that experience so that if something ever happened, I could check that off. When I bought my office, I had no idea. I had never done anything like that before. And there were so many doubts and so much challenge that came from my background, right? One of the things I talk about in this book is the mindset around money. And one of the people that I have followed for many years is Barbara Hewson, who used to be Barbara Stanny. And she also has written a lot of books around money. Six Secrets of Six Figure Women, Prince Charming Isn't Coming, et cetera, right? A host of them. But I just remember thinking, and I share a little bit about this in the book, that we have to be able to retrain ourselves to think about risk. So, like for example, when we're thinking about, hey, the example in my conference room, my conference center, when somebody says, hey, I have anxiety about that,
mhm,
and I say, okay, well, how do I reprogram myself to not see that as a bad risk?
mhm,
Because there's going to be risks that are good
mhm,
and risks that are bad,
mhm.
and our body might not always know the difference. So we
Right.
have to retrain that. And the punchline behind that was because I took the risk, 3 years later, right before COVID, I had the opportunity to sell that space. And I thought I'd be there for 30 years. But I just was feeling like things were accelerating. I needed to be able to have a more virtual office. I do rent space, but not nearly the size of what I had. We
Mhm,
sold it for cash. I made a profit, and I was able to give the two equity partners that I did have a check at the early stages of COVID because their businesses had flatlined, and they believed enough in me 3 years earlier to invest in the space, in the real estate.
wow.
And so, with potential risk came reward,
Mhm.
right? With that.
Yeah.
Um,
See.
and so, having done that, I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I think, again, it has given me the confidence to do additional challenging decisions
Mhm.
because I can build on those experiences. So we just have to, next best thing. We have a success. We do it again. We do it again. We do
Mhm.
it again. And all of a sudden we look back and we're like, holy smokes. I just did what?
Oh my, you must wonder, what did I do? Oh my God. What you're talking about is sort of like, again, facing your fear. It's understanding it. And what I loved about your book was also sort of the exercises, looking at your parents, like the narrative and where this came from. I do this so much in my healing of narcissistic abuse. Like, what's the pattern? Where did this come from? Is it historical? And so I loved that you tapped into that. But you also have a program that can help women. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So my bridge program is my signature program. It's 6 months, and it's a container in which people have access to be able to ask me questions, to be able to learn my signature bridge method, and it walks them step by step through the process.
Hmm.
And what I have found is, again, when women do a really good job when they have what's the next best thing, right?
Hmm.
Especially when you're in a position of feeling so overwhelmed that you need somebody to just tell you, listen, I'm going to take the guesswork out of what you should be working on. I'm going to just tell you, and here's what I need you to do. And they'll do it. And then it's the next best thing. So the bridge program really came out of years and years of developing a system that now finally has a name that I had done hundreds of times. And you're like, this is working. And women are getting a better outcome. And they're showing up to mediations prepared and they're knowing what questions to be asking. And oh, by the way, they're reigniting a passion for being independent and understanding that they are smart enough
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
to be
That's what
successful.
this whole thing is about, right? It's
Totally.
empowerment. And on the last page of your book, it says, if I can improve, is it, sorry,
Women's.
women's
Yeah.
relationship with money, I had empowered her for a lifetime. I love that quote. It's so, so important for people to know it's baby steps and it's empowering for a lifetime. Do this work and your future will filled with less uncertainty. You'll have more confidence, as you said, and you'll be bold. You'll have a
Yeah.
new beginning with money. And I just love everything that you've done. It's a small book, everybody, but it's really easy to grasp on and start the process. It takes baby steps, and this is your first baby step. Get this. Uh,
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
them where they can learn about the book or and your website so they can find you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Amazon, our friends at Amazon, Amazon.com, Bold Beginnings. Yes, here it is. Kindle version, hard copy. And yeah, you know what? I'm so glad you mentioned it's a short read, right? It's an interactive short read. And it was intentional. We're busy, we're overwhelmed. We just need little things that we can do that are going to move the needle forward.
Mhm.
This started as a 10 chapter book, and it was way too heavy and way too much. So we made it simple, right? Throw this in your purse. You're waiting in the car line. You're at the doctor's office, whatever. Do a couple exercises. And
Mhm.
before you know it, you'll look back and you'll have the confidence. And then my website is wfwcdivorce.com.
Yay. Well, we will put the link down below. I can't thank you enough for being here. This has been a really informative chat, and I hope that a lot of people come in and get this book because I know if you're struggling with money and you've got money trauma, money fears, you just went through a divorce, you're going through a divorce, you don't know what's on the other side, start now. I know in a divorce you've got so many balls in the air, but soon you're going to have that money ball, and if you don't know what to do with it, you better figure it out now.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for yeah, having me on today.
You're welcome, and we will see you again soon, my friend.
Sounds good.
I hope you found that helpful. Rhonda is brilliant, and she's sort of like the financial guru of divorce. So if you are struggling and you are just got that financial trauma, I strongly suggest that you go and get Bold Beginnings, and you'll see it on Amazon. It's a short read. As she said, you could read it while you're in line, waiting for the kids to come out of school, or in the doctor's office, or on the side of the soccer field. Start with baby steps. You got this. This is Tracy Malone. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. And I look forward to seeing you next time.